What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Phillies Sports History for April 11th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Feel Good Friday edition of the podcast. We got a big show. It's Fridays with AI. It's Feel Good Friday. But first, let's get into some housekeeping. As I've been mentioning, tomorrow and Sunday, I will be still having shows, but they will be coming from Hazleton, PA, as I'm going on the golf trip, which looks like it's going to be cold, snowy, rainy, lots of fun for golf. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok, on Instagram at PhillyJimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. And just a reminder that if you do follow me on social media, including Facebook and LinkedIn, I do put the highlights and clips and things like that. For instance, today's, there is no video clips of it, so it's a lot of Philadelphia Inquirer coverage of it. But all of that is on my social media if you want to get a visual to go with what we're talking about. And then, of course, go support my friend Lenny. His book, Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Age of Sports, the story of Walter French. It's available wherever you get your books. It's also available on Audible. Great book, like I said, especially if you're a history person and like to see the evolution and sort of the origins of a lot of things. Really talks about what life was like in the 1920s, talks about the early days of the NFL, the shift from the dead ball era to the live ball era in Major League Baseball, and Walter French was just right there in the middle of it. So I highly recommend the book. So go check out Lenny Wagner's book, Playing with the Best, One Man's Journey Through the Golden Age of Sports, the story of Walter French. As I mentioned, it's Fridays. We spend Fridays with AI. AI is a little busy right now, so we will hit up AI later in the show. All right, let's, I guess, start with the question of the day recap yesterday, because this ties directly into our Phillies recap. And I asked you, who's the biggest liability on the Phillies right now? Is it Bohm? Is it Brandon Marsh? Or is it the bullpen? And everybody seemed pretty split and had a different opinion on this. 44% though said it is the bullpen. More on that in a minute. The rest were Bohm was in second place, and then Brandon Marsh was there. Some people wrote in Nola. A lot of the people with the bullpen said eventually you can put somebody else in for Bohm or Marsh, where the bullpen is just, there's a lot of questionable guys, so that's why they went with the bullpen. You had some people, including Kyle from Coatesville, who compared Alec Bohm to Carson Wentz. Yikes. That's a tough comparison to make. But then you had the people saying, well, going into last night, 2 of the 3 losses were with Aaron Nola. And I don't think Aaron Nola is high on the list of liabilities right now, because I feel like with Nola, you know what you're going to get. This has pretty much been his MO. He gives up home runs sometimes in big spots. And I still say the other day, that loss was not against the Dodgers, was not on Nola. Your offense can't have 4 hits and your starting pitcher gives up 3 runs. But the bullpen takes the question of the day yesterday. Thank you, as always, for participating. We will have another one here later in the show. But Phillies last night, sheesh. It was a decent game. It was a good game there for a while, but couldn't get much going offensively. They ended up losing 4-2 in 11 innings. Bohm started the game hitting 7th. Went 0 for 5 once again, so more on that in a minute. Jesus Luzardo was a stud, though. 6 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 6 Ks. Just the pitcher's duel we expected with Sale and Wheeler happened last night. 2 hour, 45-minute rain delay didn't help. I will be honest, I did not make it through the rain delay. I fell asleep when the rain delay started. But Phillies come out losers, 4-2 in 11 innings. The Braves' just dominance over the Phillies in the regular season continues. Phillies suffer their first series loss of the year. Joe Ross, though, of the bullpen, gave up the 3 runs in the bottom of the 11th, including the home run to Marcell Ozuna. Brandon Marsh went 0 for 2. Like I said, Bohm went 0 for 5. So I think Marsh and Bohm, if they do anything, there you go. The Phillies might have a chance. The bullpen, again, it's one guy, but now this is Ross. We've seen Romano be a little bit shaky. I don't know where they go from here. They're too good to be doing this. But unfortunately, I think yesterday's question was who's the biggest liability. I think there's too many liabilities. The fact that we're talking about the biggest liability, but all three of the people we talked about yesterday as liabilities, the fact that it is a liability, I think that's the issue. But we'll see what happens. There's still plenty of time left. I do think there's going to be a big move coming at the trade deadline, so we'll see what happens with that. But Phils lose to the Braves 4-2, suffering their first series loss. They are in St. Louis tonight. Sixers are in action tonight against the Hawks, and it's a big one. The Hawks are coming off a back-to-back. They actually beat the Nets yesterday, which puts the pressure now on the Sixers. Sixers are 2 games back, or 2 games up in that 5th spot with 2 games to play. So 1 loss clinches the 5th spot in the lottery standings. They cannot get to 4, in part because of their win yesterday. But I don't know. Big one. I would love to see them just lose it tonight, and then we don't have to even worry about it, which would be spectacular. But we'll see. Eagles news. Brandon Graham was in an interview with Kay Adams, and basically, I think it was Kay Adams, and hinted that he's only 90% retired. And he talked about wanting to train to come back from this injury and just shifting his mindset. Personally, I think he's done. Would I be surprised if he comes back? No, not at all. But I think he's done. But that is today's question of the day. Is Brandon Graham officially retired? Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. I think he is. That's just the bonus question today. There'll be another one. But, I mean, the fact that it gained traction really just goes to show how much this is an Eagles town and an Eagles city where everybody is focused on the Eagles. So like a little, I don't want to say non-story, but a little glimmer really just dominated talk radio yesterday. I think he's done. I think it's an adjustment. He's trying to figure it out. But I don't know. What do you think? Would not surprise me if, depending on how things go in the draft and training camp, all of a sudden Howie's on the phone like, BG, you got one more left in you? But I think, to me, and I don't know, this is me. I've never played in the NFL. It's just my own sort of mindset. But you start thinking about legacies and how you'll be remembered. And to me, there's no better way for Brandon Graham to go out than the way he went out. Tearing the triceps in a special season, being able to battle back, come back, play in the Super Bowl, re-injure that arm, going out as one of 4 people in Eagles history with 2 Super Bowls, and going out like that, I think that's what I would do. But who knows? There was also a story that I don't know where he was, but Vic Fangio was interviewed and was talking about Zach Bond. And this is like, I thought this was incredible. Basically said he was brought in to be a special teamers and a rotational edge rusher by Howie. But then Vic saw him a couple plays in one of the first OTAs and saw something that, you know what, this dude could be an inside linebacker. Made the move, worked with him, and look where it got us. So just a pretty cool story about Vic Fangio and just his eye for talent. Be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Lots of great things going on with their sports fan network. Go to clashingconferences.com to check out what they have to offer and how you can get involved. But Steven and the crew over there do a good job. You can check out their variety of podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. But go to clashingconferences.com to check it out. And then, of course, go to Philly Goat. And I told you about the Philly Fanatic Rocks Glass, the amazing shirts. It's just, the shirts are just great. The F around and find out. You got a ton of Philly stuff. You got the shoes. Eventually, it might not feel like it outside now. Eventually, it's going to get warmer, and you're going to be going to the beach, going down to the shore. So get a pair of the canvas loafers. Those are super comfy. But check out that Rocks glass, $29.99. And if you use the promo code Jim Montgomery, you get 10% off. So go to Philly Goat, check it out. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery. Take 10% off of your order. All right, today we're going to hop in the Wayback Machine, and we're going to go all the way back to 1907. And this was opening day for the Phillies up in New York as the Polo Grounds. And the game was played a couple days after a heavy snowfall. I think you can see where this is going. On the mound that day for the Phillies was Frank Corridan. He was throwing a one-hitter and had a 3-0 lead heading into the 9th inning. Cue up the snow. And the Giants fans were not happy with obviously, their team was getting one hit. It was cold, and snow was everywhere up in New York. But they were not happy with the way the Giants were playing. Started throwing snowballs at the team to express their displeasure. Okay. Well, one of them missed and hit the umpire, and the umpire was like, nope, that's it. F this. Game over. Forced the Giants to forfeit the game, giving the Phillies the win by forfeit. Now, why am I talking about this? A game that happened back in 1907 up in New York between the Phillies and Giants. Well, all we ever hear when Philly fans act bad is, well, they threw snowballs at Santa. But I guess the national media must have completely missed this because it happened in 1907, so it doesn't count. But they'll still pull up something that happened in 1968. Just saying that fans are bad everywhere. You know I'm an advocate for Philly fans, and I saw this one, and I figured, you know what, let's have a little bit of fun with this on a Friday. But had this been in Philly, we'd still be hearing about the time the Phillies were forced to forfeit a game because they hit an umpire with a snowball. And for all Philly fans' warts, all the issues the Philly fans have, and all the narratives, we've never had a game been forfeited due to our behavior. So just national media, if you're out there listening, just keep that in mind. Also, just a little side note on this one. Obviously, there is no video highlights of this, so I was forced to go into the newspaper and look for some of the clippings. And it's interesting that the A's were only about 6 years old or so during this, but all of the coverage and everything was about the A's and not so much the Phillies. Now, that could have been because the A's were opened up the day before, too, at home. But just sort of one of those things that in the early days, the coverage and the everything was more about the A's. And again, that could have been because the Phillies were in New York. It was easier for the reporters to get down to where the A's were playing. But just throwing that out there. Just add a little more chip on my shoulder right there. But on this day, Phillies open up the season in 1907 with a win against the Giants up in the Polo Grounds by forfeit because the Giants fans decided they were going to throw snowballs and hit the umpire. But you don't hear about that. Just throwing that out there. I guess Santa ranks higher than an umpire. All right, today we're going to continue our missing ring spotlight. And these are players who just never won a championship. Came close, but never won a championship in Philadelphia. And today we're going to do a trio of Phillies greats, Jim Bunning, Dick Allen, and Johnny Callison. They were all members of that 1964 Phillies teams, and truthfully, three of the best players in Phillies history. Bunning and Allen both have their numbers retired by the Phillies and are in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Dick Allen's getting inducted in this summer. Johnny Callison is on the Phillies Wall of Fame. He was a 4-time All-Star for the Phillies. He was the MVP of the 64 All-Star game when he hit the walk-off. Jim Bunning was a 2-time All-Star with the Phillies, pitched the perfect game in 1964 on Father's Day. And then Dick Allen was a 3-time All-Star for the Phillies, Rookie of the Year in 1964, had the whole complicated relationship with the Philly media and the Philly fans. However, one of the all-time greats in Phillies history. So what you're seeing is Callison, MVP of the All-Star game, Bunning, perfect game on Father's Day, Dick Allen, Rookie of the Year. 1964 was a special season for the Phillies. And by all accounts, they led basically first place most of the summer till late September. And we all know the story. Chico Ruiz stole home, costing the Phillies a game. They blew the 6.5 game lead with 12 games left because they got tight. And then they lost 10 games in a row. Gene Mock started overusing Chris Short and Jim Bunning. They retired down the stretch, and it just snowballed. And it was basically a collapse like we've never seen until the 2023 Eagles came along. But it's a shame because Bunning, Callison, and Allen are 3 of the all-time greats in Phillies history, never winning a championship. And as far as I know, none of them ever won a championship outside of Philly either. And 1964 was their best chance, leading most of the year. It was such a special year, too, between the All-Star game, Jim Bunning's perfect game, Dick Allen winning Rookie of the Year. But they just got tight. There's so many accounts and interviews saying that they knew they were going to lose. It was just a matter of how they could lose, and you could just feel that cloud. And really not too far from where the 2023 Eagles were. But today's Missing Ring Spotlight is on Jim Bunning, Dick Allen, and Johnny Callison from the 1964 Phillies. What could have been?
It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It is time for Fridays with AI. You know what? What could have been? Let's find out what could have been. I decided this week to ask AI what would have happened if the Phillies did not blow the 6.5 game lead with 12 games left. And the results may surprise you. We just talked about Bunning, Allen, and Callison being our missing rings because obviously they would have had a shot because the Cardinals did beat the Yankees in the World Series that year. So why couldn't the Phillies have beaten the Yankees in the World Series? So in this alternate reality that I asked AI to create where the 64 Phillies did not choke and did win the National League pennant, it's interesting. Chico Ruiz still steals home, and the difference is in this reality, the team doesn't go in a tailspin. Gene Mock doesn't panic, and he trusts his other starting pitchers in the rotation, Dennis Bennett and Art Mahaffrey, and they hold their own. They do well enough to keep the Phillies afloat. Obviously, they didn't go into the tailspin they did, but I mean they kept it interesting down the stretch, going 7-5 in those last 12 games. The National League pennant came down to the last day of the season against the Reds at Connie Mack Stadium. And in dramatic fashion, our guy with the missing ring, Johnny Callison, hit a walk-off bottom of the ninth homer to win the pennant for the Phillies. Pandemonium in Philly. It wouldn't have been Broad Street at the time. It would have been, I guess Connie Mack was close enough to Broad Street. Either way, pandemonium in the streets of Philly. They love this team. They finished out the magical 1964 run where Callison hit the walk-off in the All-Star game, does the same thing to win the pennant for the Phillies. Jim Bunning pitched the perfect game on Father's Day. Dick Allen wins Rookie of the Year. Finally win the pennant after 14 years of waiting. And it's a rematch of that 1950 World Series against the Yankees. Now, how does that World Series play out? Well, Jim Bunning and Chris Short, obviously, because Gene Mock did not overuse them and relied on Bennett and Mahaffrey as well, they're rested going into the World Series. And both of them step up under the bright lights in the World Series and star. But in the World Series, the MVP should have been Dick Allen, who just had an epic World Series. You still had some hints of racism and things like that. He slugged over 300, hitting 3 home runs, played great defense, both in with his arm, catching the ball. But the MVP went to Johnny Callison, who hit a 3-run bottom of the 9th walk-off home run off of Mel Stoudemire to win the World Series for the Phillies at Connie Mack. Obviously, you have to give the MVP to Callison, I guess, there. But Dick Allen was the star of the series. Callison was the hero. Phillies win the game 5-2, win the World Series in 7 games. Just a flair for the dramatic. Now, put that on ice here on a while, because we're going to get back to the dramatic and heroics and things like that. But what was the aftermath? I don't think it's far-fetched that if the Phillies didn't blow it down the stretch, that they win the World Series against the Yankees. After all, the Cardinals did the same thing. But I'm more interested in what happened afterwards, because it seems like there were a generation of Philly fans who were scarred pretty deep from the fold or the collapse, whatever you want to call it. Well, they do start a mini little dynasty. They won 2 more pennants in the next 4 years. They never won a World Series again. But it changes the trajectory of the team, though, where they don't go in the tank and they're terrible in the early 70s. And they do win another World Series in the early 70s. So this core group from 64 only won the 1, but the trajectory of the team changes. And because they're able to stay afloat and become sort of a place where people want to play, they did win another one in the early 70s. Dick Allen and the fans don't have as much beef. I think one way or the other, Philly fans are going to give players crap, and I think Dick Allen was the kind of guy that was going to give it right back. But he stays in Philly his whole career, becomes a beloved player in Philly sports history, and does get into the Hall of Fame on his own merit. But the story of this, if the Phillies did not collapse in 64, is more about the fans. The identity of Philly fans is not the bitter, we booed Santa Claus, threw snowballs at him type, but just one of fierce loyalty. That even though it was interesting down the stretch, they stayed with the team and really followed through with them. And Philly tough becomes sort of a moniker and a way of life. And then that just kind of gets fueled on when the Rocky movie comes out in the late 70s, because the Phillies at that point have won 2 World Series, were one of the better teams then in the National League, and then retooling with Mike Schmidt and those guys in the late 70s. So Philly tough becomes the moniker and the motto of Philly fans, and becomes really a way of life. And it's the perfect sort of way to describe the fans of Philly, the people of Philadelphia. Obviously, there's no curse of Billy Penn. The Eagles win a Super Bowl before 1952. And again, this might be a little AI getting a little wonky here. Wilt Chamberlain stays with the Sixers his whole career. They don't win an extra championship, but they do stay competitive. Gene Mauch is known not so much as a choker, but as a managerial genius. Becomes a Hall of Famer, wins World Series with other teams. But this is where it gets interesting. 1976 was a big pop culture moment in Philadelphia history. Obviously, you had Rocky coming out that December anyway. But there was another movie that came out called Miracle in Red Pinstripes, the story of the 1964 Phillies, starring Robert Redford as Jim Bunning. So it really was up there, and because it was based on a true story, fans loved it. And sure, they loved Rocky, but more people wanted to see Miracle in Red Pinstripes than the Rocky movie. But yeah, and of course Robert Redford starred as Jim Bunning, didn't hurt. But the Phillies become America's lovable underdogs turned champions. That's sort of the mindset, and you know how we embrace the underdog mentality here in Philly. And one little last pop culture moment, if the Phillies don't blow this, there's a song that comes out coinciding with the start of the famous race by the same name called Broad Street Run. It's a B-side on one of Bruce Springsteen's albums, and it's about growing up in a city where even the Phillies win. Comes out in 1980, the same year that the Phillies win the World Series for their third title, and becomes sort of the anthem of the 1980 Phillies teams. And a song that Bruce Springsteen didn't necessarily think was going to be big becomes big because the Phillies win the World Series. So Broad Street Run by Bruce Springsteen becomes one of his most famous songs. Now, who knows if any of that's going to happen, but according to AI, the Phillies would have won the World Series had they not blown it down the stretch in 1964. This has been Fridays with AI. Had a little bit of fun here on a Friday with that. I would love to see, like, even if it's like a made-up movie now, if somebody wants to make Miracle in Red Pinstripes, sounds like a pretty good story. But anyway, thank you. That was Fridays with AI. I don't know. But we're going to bring it down for a minute here. The real question of the day I had written out is, which is a bigger collapse, the 64 Phillies or the 23 Eagles? Call me on the Back to the Future voice and text line, 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Get that, anything else Philly sports related off your chest. But according to AI, the Phillies do win the World Series if they don't choke down the stretch. On this day in 1907, Phillies beat the Giants on opening day by forfeit because the Giants fans were throwing snowballs and hit the umpire. Funny that we've never heard about this until today. Just saying. We'll have more on the Phillies tomorrow. Remember, I'll be coming live, or not live, but taped up at the mountains. Hopefully the Phillies can bounce back. Rooting for the Hawks tonight so the Sixers can clinch that 5th spot, and then it's all about the ping pong balls at that point. But this has been This Day in Philly Sports History for April 11th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a feel-good Friday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.